This, you don't even have to know anything. Can you read a map, right? That's all that is. Which cities, campuses add to the Persian Empire? I don't even know who that guy is.
All right, that's good. When did you start teaching?
1970.
Why did you start teaching?
I thought it was a worthwhile thing to do. I thought I'd come to the conclusion that you could change the world through little things, not big things, and I liked summer vacations.
What did you do before you became a teacher?
Well, it takes a while to become a teacher. I worked at being a teacher. I started off in South Bronx in New York City. I taught there. Then I taught in a juvenile detention facility for emotionally disturbed children who were too emotionally disturbed to go to reform school. It was interesting. And then I taught in William Fleming High School, and then I taught in Stonewall Jackson Junior High School, and I came to Nelson County High School. Before that, I worked in construction mostly. Worked on a fish pier, took in hay.
How do you think all of those things that you just did, or that you did before teaching, influenced the way you teach?
Well, I think those things didn't influence. The way I teach was influenced by the fact that when I first taught, discipline, there was no form of way you could discipline things through power. You had to discipline through interest. You had to get students to be interested, or they weren't going to pay attention. They didn't care what grade they got. And I think that influenced the way I teach.
How do you influence your students?
How do I influence my students?
Yeah.
I don't know. I take what I do seriously. I think that's the most important way you influence your teacher is the way you do, what you're doing.
Do you think you influence your students well enough to change their ways of how they educate themselves?
Well, I think that they need to, I think only real education occurs is when students take possession of their own education. But, you can say that a lot of times, but it doesn't usually happen. At first, I think, you got to have a purpose for learning.
Okay.
If you have a follow-up question, ask your follow-up question. Listen to what I say.
What's your philosophy behind education?
Philosophy behind education?
Yeah.
Democracy. That everybody is capable of being responsible for themselves. And if they're going to be responsible for themselves, they have to realize that there are what you do matters. There are consequences to your actions, and if you don't understand the consequences to what you do, you're hardly free. We pretend in our society that the choice between Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola is freedom. That's nothing but control. What you want to do is you want to take people take possession of themselves. You want them to feel that what they do matters, and they need to know something if they're going to understand what the consequences of their actions are.
Everyone that comes into this class always says that you're a great teacher. Do you see yourself as a good teacher?
I tell everybody that.
Like
a great teacher. I mean, that's a lot to live up to, being a great teacher.
I mean, you have the whole school behind you. Everyone wants to get in your class.
Yeah, well, good. It makes me feel good. I don't even know what that is. I mean, every person has something to teach, and they have to teach it in a way that is consistent with what they think themselves. The idea that you can teach people to be a teacher is the idea of people who are in education schools that that are probably lousy teachers, so they decide that the reason they can't teach is the students are no good, so they go on to teach in college, and then try to figure out some methodology of teaching when there is no such thing. You either have something to teach, and you have the willingness to teach it and respect the children you teach, or not.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Barton.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, those are, what are they?
The water thingies.
The water things, yeah. The invention of the wheel, we talked about, the discovery of iron. But people stopped roaming when they grew food. It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so right there, just do 3 out of 4 right. Even if you got the one wrong, but 4, maybe 4 right. All right, quick, do the next page. Do the 5, 6, and 7. Do it quickly. Just do it quickly. I'm not gonna wait a long time.
All right. How does Mr. Barton influence you, if he does, and why or why not?
In a lot of ways, by just the way he teaches. It's different from other people, the way they teach. Like, he actually talks to us. Just, I feel like I learn a lot more in there than other classes.
Are there any,
Learning as really just memorizing stuff. I think of it as actually learning something, to be able to think of something by yourself and actually come up with the answer.
His little heart, his thin little tiny heart, and not to love big, not to take any risk in order to survive. Don't take any risk. What does Setha do? What does Setha do? How does she respond to this thing? In this novel, what does she do? What does she do?
She took a risk.
No, she did.
Yes, she did.
No, she did.
Yes,
What did she
she
did?
did.
She didn't take any risk. What did she do?
She killed her daughter.
She killed.
How's Mr. Barton influence you?
Mr. Barton is one of the most impressive teachers in the high school. He makes it easy for the students to learn and really inspires the children to learn that are in his class.
Well, that's a great question. Mr. Barton is a really great teacher in that he really challenges the student to embrace many new cultures and ideas and not just accept the norm, what you're used to. Mr. Barton has really expanded my mind and my way of thinking.
To have a slave. Now look, this is a sad thing. You got to convince them that they can't do anything about their situation and that you are the definer of them. You define them. You say who they are. And in his psyche, Paul D is saying,
11:30.
I'm not up to this. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm going to say something, and I'm not saying it. It's wrong, but I'm saying it. But I want to ask you the question. Is that bred into Paul D? Is it bred into Paul D that he can't do anything?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. Why do you say it is?
Disagree.
It's not bred into anything. The whole thing is see the idea, what they're trying to, it's like, you Kentucky Derby, you breed in stamina, speed, and all this other stuff, the idea. We're not talking about, it's the experience of not being able to feel and believe in yourself that you can do it. If you do it, you're just going to screw it up. So before you screw it up, you leave. Pretty harsh stuff. I'm a woman. This is a woman. Toni Morrison. There's a woman. She's pointing her
Thanks to you
finger.
as a person.
Mr. Barton. Yeah, I guess what Mr. Barton has installed in me is the fact that no matter what someone says that you can't do, you can't do. And that's something that I always have taken with me from the time that he's taught me to now. Always proving somebody wrong and giving that extra effort to accomplish what I need to accomplish.
From a teaching standpoint, how has Mr. Barton influenced you?
Mr. Barton for me has been a mentor teacher. I've been here for 4 years, and through observing him in dozens and dozens of classes, I've noticed how he gets students to question their preconceived notions and their assumptions about themselves and the world that they live in. Also, the joy that he brings to teaching is something that is infectious and is an inspiration to me as a younger teacher. And so he's been, I would say, more of a mentor and somebody who's helped me figure out what I need to do.